position. But God chose what is humble in the world to proclaim his good news. God chose what is foolish in this world to accomplish what the world doesn't respect. For I have chosen you, and I will work with you. In Jesus' name, amen. Let us pray. Oh, Almighty God, we thank you. Thank you for the ways you come into our lives. Thank you for the way you claim them by your call. And thank you for the Holy Spirit's working that enables us to respond to that call and proudly say we belong to Jesus Christ. In his name we pray. Amen. Amen. The title of this morning's sermon is accurate. Why so many fishermen? Well, the fact is it raises the question. The fishermen Jesus calls, and a large number of them, are in fact fishermen. Why so many fishermen? You know, in this day of diversity, and people trying to enforce that, this Jesus never would have made it. Because here's an overload of fishermen, men, and of one occupation. Makes you wonder. And that's exactly what I was wondering. What was there about fishermen that made them such an attractive prospect for Jesus calling them into discipleship? Well, here's some of my speculation. First of all, fishermen tend to be patient. I learned that when I was 10 years old, I think. There was a man down the street who invited me to go fishing with him. And so on a Saturday morning, he took me down to the pond, and we got our bait ready and our hooks and threw the line into the water, and we sat there. And we sat there. And after that, we sat there. As a young boy of 10, that was not my most exciting morning. At first, we had a few things to talk about. Then we had nothing to talk about. And the only thing I could think of is, oh, when can I go home? But it wasn't too bad a day. I caught, in those 3 hours, one small fish, and he caught 3. Well, the fact is that I learned that day that fishermen had to be patient. And that's probably one of the things that attracted fishermen to Jesus. You need to be patient when you're a disciple of Jesus Christ. When you're sowing seed in the image of Jesus, it doesn't come up right away. You have to wait. You have to wait for it to come up. And there are many things involved in the ministry that you and I do. You plant the seeds, and you do have to wait. Wait for them to come to fruition. Wait for things to happen. I think of teachers, too, who have students in their classes. Some of them seemingly without promise or not doing real well. But then, later in life, they run into them and find out all their accomplishments. It's a matter of waiting to see what happens, what comes to fruition. And so that's true with us as disciples of Jesus. We have to be patient. We have to be diligent in what we do in spreading the gospel, but we can't expect it to happen overnight. We have to keep after it. So the fact is, patience, I think, was one of the things that caused Jesus to call fishermen. Here's another one. Perseverance. Perseverance I learned from the same man, Mr. Buchanan, because he would walk by our house every Saturday morning with his fishing pole and his bait. And he would look at me if I was on the porch and raise an inquiring eyebrow, wondering if I was going to join him that day. Didn't happen. But he would go off, and often he'd come back with a really good catch. And his wife loved to cook fish, and you could go by their house and smell that aroma. It was wonderful. And days when he didn't too well, you could smell spaghetti. But he kept at it, week after week, always with a raised eyebrow, always persistent, Mr. Buchanan. And the fact is, Jesus wants that in us. It's no secret. You and I sometimes do become weary in well-doing. We've been in the church for so long, some of us. We've done so many things. And we have to keep on going. Jesus calls us to be persistent disciples, to keep doing the things that he calls us to do, trusting him that they will come to fruition. I also believe that he called those fishermen because they were courageous. You say, well, they courageous about? Fishermen on the Sea of Galilee. You see, the Sea of Galilee is in a great rift. It's a rift that runs from well north of Galilee. It's a great gash in the geological surface. It goes all the way down into Egypt, in fact. And it's a 600-foot gash, so that the Sea of Galilee is more than 600 feet below sea level. Now that meant there was a big channel, and the winds from the north sometimes would build up and come down that channel suddenly with such amazing force that the waves on this little lake, it's 15 miles by 8 miles, would produce white caps and then threatening waves out of nowhere. So that every time a fisherman went out from the house that day and went out to fish, didn't know what was going to happen. He might may find himself having to be courageous because of the terrible weather that ensued. And you know the story about Jesus calming the sea. The Sea of Galilee was so much in turmoil that day that Jesus heard them say, "We're going to drown, don't you care?" And he calmed the waters and calmed their hearts as well. And also changed their lives in the process. For who can control the weather like that? Well, courage is what we need in our ministry. Sometimes it takes us places we don't want to go. But very often, having been taken there, we find out that we can trust God. And God, in fact, will use us well. So when we start to waver in our courage as disciples of Christ, we need to remind how many times Jesus says to us, "Fear not. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me." Also, I think he called them because of good judgment. Good judgment was exhibited in them because they had to know how to fish. Not like a 10-year-old me. I didn't know how to fish. And did I learn later? No, I didn't learn how to fish. But the fact is, I did learn from Mr. Buchanan that the right bait was important, and the right hook and line. So the fact is that we have to have that good judgment. When we spread the gospel, we have to spread it in a way that it really takes root. That's what we find in the Gospels. The Gospel of Matthew is written to Jews that he wants to persuade that Jesus is the long-expected Messiah. So he quotes Old Testament lessons back and forth. Old Testament verses come up so often in Matthew. And he builds on their belief and their experience as Jews. Now Mark writes to an entirely different audience. He knows who his audience is. His audience are persecuted Christians. And he tells them stories about Jesus that show his courage, even though he's been badgered by his enemies. He shows them how he has steadfast eyes on Jerusalem and offering himself as God's sacrifice for them. And he says to them, Christ has suffered, even as you suffered, but you will prevail. That's Mark's gospel. Luke's gospel was written by a Gentile, a non-Jew. He's the one who's writing to the Romans. They too, in addition to the religious authorities in Israel, are the ones who are persecuting the Christians. They're outlawed. Death is often the penalty. Imprisonment, if not. So the fact is that he's writing them, to the Gentiles, some of whom have influence over the government. And he's saying, look, here are the stories about Jesus. Here's the report about him. He's a good man. He is no threat to you. In fact, he has hope and promise for every one of you. So the fact is that you don't need to go after him nor those who believe in him. He tells them, don't persecute them. That's important. And so, eventually that does happen, talking about persistence. In the year 325, the Roman Emperor Constantine declared that Christianity was so good that it was going to become the religion of the empire. Persistence, patience. But they weren't always people of good judgment. While they certainly focused their attention on their audience, the disciples that Jesus called were not perfect. And we know who else isn't perfect. We're not perfect. Jesus calls us not because we're perfect, because he needs us. He wants us. He sees in us something that can serve him well in a variety of ways. If you look around this congregation, you see people with such an amazing variety of gifts. And we all come together and make ourselves one gift to Jesus our Lord. And then the final thing I think that Jesus saw in the fishermen was the fact that they were often out of sight in terms of they were not high-profile people. That's the fact that Jesus says. And Paul reminds us, not many of you had wisdom, not many of you had status. The fact is, they were ordinary folks. It was Abraham Lincoln who said, God must love the ordinary people. He made so many of them. That's true. But the fact is that Jesus calls disciples who don't want to make a big deal about themselves, but focus on him. Christ first, not us first. And so it is that he calls them to be in the background and put him in the foreground because he is the one who is attracting us and providing us with salvation and hope. So that's what he was looking for. And I think that's what he found. And that's who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be disciples who are patient and persevering, to have courage, to show good judgment, and to stand back and let Jesus take the forefront while we support him in every way. The good news of the gospel is Jesus says, no, you didn't call me. I called you. And every one of you, every one of us has been called by Jesus. Thanks be to God. What a privilege. What an honor. Let us pray. Lord God, how we thank you. Thank you for coming into our lives. Surprise us by calling us to be your very own disciples. And how we thank you that you equip us to do the work you call us to do. May we, in everything we say and do, give you praise and glory. We ask it all in your name. Amen.